Ecuador's agricultural workers announced that they will join the next protest called by unions and said to be willing to stage a national agricultural strike. Russia and Syria reinforce bilateral relations amid Western pressure. Guinea's ruling military junta announced the opening of borders and the start of national meetings after the coup that ousted President Condé. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is from the South. I'm Ray Gomez. We begin in Ecuador, where agricultural workers announced that they will join the protest called by unions for this Wednesday. Sugarcane, banana, and rice growers, as well as other workers, announced that they will join the mobilizations called by the United Workers Front. In addition, they said to be pondering carry out a large national agricultural strike to make the government aware of the crisis. The low payment of the minimum support price, the closure of the national storage unit, the increase in prices of agricultural inputs, and the high cost of fuel are the main reasons for the demonstrations. The producers are also demanding that the government rule out Decree 183, which criminalizes unauthorized banana plantations, affecting small producers with poor resources. Sectors of civil society will march peacefully on Wednesday in San Salvador to protest against the Bitcoin law and the re-election of President Nayib Bukele. The reinstatement of the rule of law and the defense of democracy will be the main slogans of the mobilization at Plaza Morazan. The recent government's decision to declare Bitcoin legal tender alongside the U.S. dollar, the ruling of the Constitutional Chamber of the Supreme Court to allow President Bukele to stand as a candidate in the next elections, and the establishment of a new reform to the judicial guerrilla law have been the most recent measures rejected by the Salvadorans. On Tuesday, Peruvian justice resumes hearings in the case of forced sterilizations against former President Alberto Fujimori and his former health ministers. The public prosecutor's office has presented a formal accusation against former President Fujimori and his former health ministers Eduardo Young, Marina Costa Bauer, and Alejandro Aguinaga, accused of being the perpetrators of this attack against more than 1,300 women and as part of the then government planned National Reproductive Health and Family Planning Program. The hearings resume after a 3-month pause and a preliminary court session to present evidence by the prosecution. The forced sterilizations were applied between 1996 and 2000 to more than 300,000 indigenous farmers, Andean and Amazonian women living in low-income areas. The armed forces and the national police in Peru killed the terrorist known as Hernan or Fernan in the district of Vizcayán del Ena. During the joint operation, the police seized weapons, guns and ammunition, communications materials and documentation. Through its Twitter account, the Ministry of Defense stated that the government is committed to fight against terrorism. The area of the attack is part of a valley formed by the Apurimac and Amantara rivers. This valley has been under military surveillance since 2006, when the government reported the presence of the Shining Path terrorist group operating in alliance with drug trafficking gangs. On May 23rd, an attack by members of this terrorist group in the town of San Miguel del Ene left 16 civilians dead, including 4 minors. At the 48th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council, Venezuela denounced the ongoing U.S. unilateral coercive measures and their negative impact on the population. Nevertheless, it stated that the lives and fundamental rights of its citizens continue to be guaranteed. The High Commissioner's own report recognized the successful management of the pandemic, despite the seizure of assets, as stated by Hector Constant, Venezuela's representative to the Council, who denounced once more that the U.S. prevents the country from acquiring food and medicines. The High Commissioner, in addition to recognizing the damage done by the sanctions to the Venezuelan people, thanked the government for the progress made in cooperation and technical assistance. Venezuela's representative expressed concern that in spite of their contribution, they continue to see politicized elements in the organization's report that negatively affect its objectivity and credibility.
The United States government has continued its siege against Venezuela with the imposition of illegal unilateral coercive measures that are causing death, pain, and suffering to the Venezuelan people. It continues to seize Venezuelan assets abroad, freezing and looting billions of dollars in foreign banks, depriving the Venezuelan state of its vital resources to acquire food, medicines, and medical supplies.
The Ministry of Productive Development and Plural Economy in Bolivia inaugurated the second freeze dyeing plant of fruits in the municipality of Yatunari, department of Cochabamba. President Luis Arce and other government officials were present at the inauguration. On July 3rd, the first freeze dyeing fruit plant opened in the Yungas province to increase production in the area. The new plant, run by the Bolivian Food and Beverage Company, will provide around 100 direct jobs and another 500 indirect to benefit the more than 18,000 families who produce different fruits and vegetables. In this context, President Arce highlighted that tanks and drinking water system were delivered to benefit the people in southern Bolivia.
Recently here in District 9, we were inaugurating gas distribution systems, now water. Water for the southern region, brothers and sisters. The water issue has always been a present subject. Not only did it cause the gas war, but also mark the beginning, the seed for defeating and ousting the neoliberal governments. The struggle that took place in the streets and your struggle for water demonstrated that there is an alternative to neoliberalism. And there came the movement for socialism, with nationalization and now with water, brothers and sisters.
The United States government will start accepting new applications for the immigration policy that allows some U.S.-based parents to bring their children from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador to the country legally. The acceptance of new petitions marked the final stage of the Biden administration's revival of the Central American Minors Initiative, which U.S. officials have portrayed as a safe and legal alternative to the often dangerous journey unaccompanied children undertake to reach the southern border. Officials said that during the first stage of the revival of this program, which was terminated by the Trump administration in 2017, the U.S. identified over 3,000 pending cases that had been closed because of the termination. Pending applicants for asylum or a EU non-immigrant status for victims of criminal activity, known as EU visas, green card holders, and other with temporary legal status can also apply. We'll be back after this very short break. Welcome back. On Monday, Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted his Syrian counterpart Bashar al-Assad. Both leaders have reaffirmed bilateral relations and trade and cooperation in the fight against terrorism. During the meeting, President Putin stated that Syria has managed to free more than 90% of its territory from terrorist occupation and will find in Russia a strong ally. The Russian president also said that it is necessary that unauthorized foreign troops, neither from the United Nations nor from Damascus, leave the Arab country, since they represent a security issue for the region. In spite of pockets of resistance from terrorist factions and inhumane sections of some Western countries, Syria has managed to reactivate key productive sectors and is making increasing progress in the reconstruction of cities destroyed by war and terrorism.
The main problem, in my view, is that foreign armed forces remain in certain regions of the country without the approval of the United Nations and without your permission. Terrorists have suffered very serious significant damage, and the Syrian government, headed by you, controls 90% of the country's territory.
And we stay in Russia, where President Putin went into self-isolation Tuesday as a result of at least one person around him testing positive for coronavirus. Kremlin Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov said the president is absolutely in good health. Peskov added that the mandatory isolation would not affect his work, but there would be no face-to-face events for some time. Putin had been due to attend that summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, later this week, with the situation in Afghanistan understood to be high on the agenda. He will reportedly attend the meeting virtually. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced some fiscal measures which will see the price of electricity reduced. Sanchez mentioned that his government aimed to tackle gas prices before it becomes an issue over winter. The reduction of electricity tax will be from its current 5.11% to 0.5%, which is the minimum required by European Union legislation. The official also reverted to the beginning of a dialogue process between Catalan regional government and the Spanish state, aimed at solving the tensions over the growing pro-independence sentiment in the region. Guatemala reports more than 12,000 deaths from COVID-19 after 18 months of pandemic in its territory. According to reports from the Ministry of Health, about 90% of the 340 municipalities are on high alert due to the high rates of positive cases of COVID-19. In the last 24 hours, 733 new infections and 44 new fatalities have been recorded, according to official data. Hospital occupancy is also a cause for concern, with 97% of intensive care units at top capacity. The country's health authorities have warned that the number of deaths has tripled and that it is quite possible that there is an undercounting of deaths. The Congress of Guatemala approved the emergency law for the attention of COVID-19. Congreso, that's right. The bill passed by absolutely majority and with national urgency after an extensive 4-day debate in search of political consensus to pass the legislation. However, experts in public management and transparency will see risks in the law that could have negative effects on the management of up to 200 million euros that are contemplated to be granted to the Ministry of Health. The temporary law will facilitate the acquisition of medicines, goods, supplies, services, medical and surgical material, and hiring technical or professional services with public funds. It also includes a bonus for health workers and a budget increase for the sector until December. Cuba's Prime Minister Manuel Marrero insisted on the need to control the epidemiological situation sparked by COVID-19 in order to gradually open up the country and reactivate the national economy. The head of government highlighted the importance of reactivating the economy and social activities during the daily meeting with provincial authorities to assess the development of the health situation. Marrero stressed the need to strengthen control mechanisms that allow sustaining a favorable situation. Cuba, which is struggling to reduce its high peaks of infections since the beginning of the pandemic, registered more than 8,000 COVID-19 cases and 74 deaths in the last 24 hours. So far, the nation reports more than 753,000 infections and nearly 6,400 deaths.
We need to open up the country. We need to reactivate the economy. We also need to make everything socially dynamic and reincorporate people. But for that, we need to see how we can achieve this situation, to get it under control.
President Jair Bolsonaro said Monday that he did not take any of the vaccines against the new coronavirus and once again downplayed the seriousness of the health crisis in Brazil. Leaving the Alvorada Palace, Bolsonaro mentioned the result of a blood antibody test to justify his supposed immunity and downplayed the importance of the vaccine by stating that he has not received the injection. His statements coincided with the overcoming of the 21 million infected in Brazil and the call of Health Minister Marcelo Quiroga to vaccination. Bolsonaro had been diagnosed with the disease in July last year, although he only had mild symptoms. Since the beginning of the pandemic, and mirroring U.S. former President Donald Trump, the Brazilian president has been characterized for not respecting preventive measures and for downplaying the severity of the coronavirus. Hurricane Nicholas slammed into the Texas coast this morning, with meteorologists warning of life-threatening flooding. Storm was packing maximum sustained winds of 120 kilometers per hour and was expected to dam up to around 460 millimeters of the rain in the Houston area. The U.S. National Hurricane Center warned that the storm was bringing heavy rains, strong winds, and storm surges of portions of the central and upper Texas coast. The NHC also issued a storm surge warning for much of the Gulf Coast, meaning there is a danger of life-threatening inundation from rising water moving inland from the coastline. The weather agency urged the people in the area to take all necessary actions to protect life and property. We have more news coming up after this final short break. Welcome back. After the coup that overthrew President Alpha Conde, Guinea's ruling military junta announced the opening of borders and next national meetings. According to a statement issued on Tuesday, the border with Sierra Leone will be operational again from this Wednesday, the border with Liberia from Thursday, and those with Ivory Coast, Mali, and Guinea-Bissau will open between Friday and next Monday. Likewise, the military junta confirmed the beginning of a round of meetings with different sectors, starting with representatives of political parties this Tuesday and religious leaders on Wednesday. Authorities in Burkina Faso reported that at least 6 deaths after an ambush against an armed unit. 7 other soldiers were wounded in the attack that occurred where the soldiers were escorting several tanker trucks from a gold mine near the border with Niger. Authorities of the East African country said that the 6 fatalities were all members of the army. They also reported that the ambush was allegedly carried out by suspected extremists. Since 2015, attacks by groups linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda have increased in Burkina Faso, leaving another 1,500 people dead and more than 1 million displaced. This Tuesday, Palestinians gathered during a sit-in protest in front of the International Committee of the Red Cross headquarters in Ramallah in support of the Palestinian prisoners who escaped from the high-security Israeli prison last week. Israel has recaptured 4 of the 6 prisoners who escaped after an intense manhunt, which saw more troops pour into the occupied Palestinian territory of the West Bank. In this context, Palestinians rallied in most West Bank cities and villages and the besieged Gaza Strip in solidarity with Palestinian prisoners held by Israel and against the brutal mistreatment by the occupying forces. Since Monday's escape from Gilboa prison, the Israeli prison service has launched a campaign of repression with punitive measures against other Palestinian prisoners in flagrant violation of international conventions and agreements.
It is a very bad situation inside the prisons. which prompted the prisoners to prepare for a hunger strike. Friday will be the first day of the strike with 1,380 prisoners in 8 Israeli prisons, followed by another on Tuesday, who will go on hunger strike. Exactly how many people will go on strike, we don't know yet, but we expect it to be in the hundreds. Israel refuses the visit of lawyers for the 4 prisoners who escaped from the prison rearrested, as well as the Red Cross or any other party from visiting them. There are fears that they will be beaten and tortured. There is a danger to their lives.
Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi attended a hearing at a special court on Tuesday as she was feeling better after suffering from car sickness and had escaped the proceedings. The hearings were due to resume after 8 weeks of holidays designated by the military junta since mid-July. Suu Kyi was deposed in the February coup that sparked a mass uprising. The junta launched a crackdown to suppress the opposition, and its forces have killed more than 1,000 civilians since. The leader is facing 6 charges for alleged violation of COVID restrictions, possession of walkie-talkies, corruption, sedition, and violating the Official Secret Act, with a potential prison sentence of 75 years. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said the United States should make a thorough probe into and give a responsible account for its mistaken killing of Afghan civilians in an airstrike.
Recently, there has been widespread media coverage of the mistaken killing of Afghan civilians by the U.S. military, and there has also been an international call to hold the U.S. accountable. In face of widespread doubts and unanimous condemnation from the international community, the U.S. should not try to muddle through and run away from it. It must thoroughly investigate the truth and give a responsible account to the Afghan people and the international community.
We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Ray Gomez. I thank you for watching.